Hello and welcome to our channel. In today's video we explore one of the most dramatic and consequential stories unfolding across Africa and touching the corridors of power in Moscow and Washington. It is a tale of ambition, betrayal, covert operations, and geopolitical wills clashing on African soil. The narrative centers on a purported assassination plot tied to Wagner's ambitions in Africa, and how Ibrahim Traoré may have turned the tables, effectively ruining Putin's plan in Africa. Along the way we'll examine the broader implications in Africa, the reactions in the United States, compare the two theaters, and draw a strong conclusion about what this means for global power dynamics. Stay with me, because this story is far more than an isolated plot. It speaks to the deep contest over influence in Africa, the fragility of alliances, and the risks when mercenary forces become instruments of state policy. We begin with the setup. How Wagner and Russia have long sought to expand influence in Africa, the rise of Traoré in Burkina Faso, and the attempt to remove him. In recent years, the Wagner Group, a Russian private military company with close ties to the Russian state, has been deeply involved across multiple African countries. Wagner's role is not merely military. It offers protection, security services, and even governance assistance. In return, it extracts mineral concessions, lands, strategic access, and political leverage. After the death of its founder, Yevgeny Prigozhin, Wagner's operations were reorganized under more direct Kremlin control, via the so-called Africa Corps, and other Russian state structures. Vladimir Putin has sought to maintain and deepen this influence, aiming to reshape Africa's alignments away from Western powers toward Russia. One of the key theaters of this contest has been the Sahel region in West Africa, including Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso, under Captain Ibrahim Traoré since 2022, has increasingly distanced itself from its historical ties to France and Western powers, pivoting instead towards sovereign rhetoric and deeper cooperation with non-Western actors. This posture places it squarely in the zone of influence Russia wants to dominate. But the recent twist is the foiled assassination or coup plot against Traoré, allegedly involving foreign actors, internal conspirators, and big money. Reports surfaced in April 2025 that a high-ranking official in Traoré's circle was arrested after confessing to accepting a bribe of some 25 billion CFA francs, about 41 million United States dollars, and coordinating arms shipments via Côte d'Ivoire. The aim purportedly was to destabilize or remove Traoré's regime. The government framed it as an external meddling attempt, possibly involving French or Ivorian networks, though these claims are contested. If true, this operation would amount to a covert war plan: eliminate a resisting leader, replace him with a more pliable one, and thereby smooth the implementation of Putin's Africa agenda in the region. But it appears the plan backfired. Traoré and his security apparatus uncovered it, arrested the conspirators, and turned the narrative into a demonstration of strength. In so doing, Traoré may have crippled Moscow's push in West Africa, at least temporarily. Let us now examine in greater depth what has happened in Africa, the aftermath, the shifting power plays, and how these developments reflect broader currents on the continent. First, Burkina Faso and Traoré's position. Traoré's government has consistently played a bold, even defiant, posture. Since taking power, he has emphasized national sovereignty, combated jihadist insurgencies, and rejected the old post-colonial arrangements that tie Burkina Faso closely to France's influence. That posture makes him a symbol of resistance to Western dominance, but also places him in Moscow's crosshairs for infiltration or manipulation. The foiled coup plot amplified his political aura. By arresting foreign nationals or domestic actors implicated, Traoré painted the plot as outside interference, an existential threat to Burkina Faso's autonomy. He rallied public support and legitimized further centralization of power under the security apparatus. In the short term, this gave him momentum and a narrative of being under siege, which can be a powerful political resource. Second, other Sahel countries. Burkina Faso is not isolated. Mali and Niger are fellow Sahel states that have themselves undergone coups and shifts in alignment. In Mali, Putin's ambitions are shifting after heavy losses by Wagner forces. In June 2025, Wagner announced its withdrawal from Mali, though Russia's Africa Corps remains active. That development suggests that the Russians are recalibrating their footprint, perhaps moving toward lighter footprint methods, training, logistics, protection, rather than direct combat. Yet the transition is fraught. Local partners, rebel groups, and states are pushing back. In Mali's Kidal region, rebels from the Azawad Liberation Front struck Malian and allied Russian troops, inflicting significant losses, about 45 Russian and Malian soldiers reportedly killed, vehicles destroyed or captured. That setback underscores that local resistance remains potent. The rebranded Africa Corps cannot assume control without friction. Meanwhile, in the Central African Republic, Bangui is resisting Moscow's push to replace Wagner with the new Africa Corps and demand cash payments rather than resource concessions. CAR's government favors the entrenched Wagner presence for reasons including operational familiarity, established relationships, and the embedded nature of Wagner in CAR's resource economy. This is a sign that the Russian reorientation is meeting resistance even among its clients. Across Africa, this dynamic is playing out. Russia is losing its ability to simply insert paramilitary forces and dictate terms. Local actors are asserting more agency, rejecting opaque influence. The Traoré assassination plot episode may signal a turning point, that a regional leader can resist covert attempts to change regime fate. Finally, a larger undercurrent, the contest between Russia and Western powers, especially the West and the US, for influence in Africa. Russia's appeal rests on offering alternatives to conditional aid, using force where others shy away, and trading access for resources. But its model exposes it to risks: overreach, backlash, unsustainability. The plot in Burkina Faso reveals that such machinations can backfire, especially when local actors are vigilant. Now let us turn to developments in the United States, how Washington sees the Wagner influence in Africa, what responses are underway, and how the Traoré episode might recalibrate U.S. strategy. The United States has long viewed Africa through a combination of strategic interest, development aid, and security cooperation. In recent years, competition with China has sharpened U.S. focus in Africa. Russia's traction through Wagner and militarized influence raises alarms in Washington, because it threatens to weaken Western leverage and expand a rival power's security presence. Consequently, the U.S. has stepped up sanctions, diplomatic pressure, intelligence partnerships, and support for African militaries. In particular, the Wagner Group has been designated a transnational criminal organization by the U.S. government, and its abuses and resource exploitation have been flagged in multiple reports. The U.S. is wary that Wagner's influence helps fuel instability, human rights violations, and client states beholden to Russia rather than to pluralist governance or international norms. In response, the United States has sought to strengthen security partnerships with African states, provide counterinsurgency training, drone and intelligence cooperation, and promote transparency in mineral extraction. It also pressures global financial systems to restrict resource flows that benefit Wagner and Russia. If the Traoré plot truly involved foreign actors or pro-Russian networks, it offers a potential opening for the U.S. to expand its influence. Washington may seek to support Burkina Faso, albeit cautiously, with security assistance or diplomatic backing, positioning itself as defender of sovereignty rather than an old colonial actor. This could be a soft pivot, leveraging the political narrative created by Traoré to gain influence. At the same time, the U.S. must navigate complex optics. Supporting a military regime in a region of coups and instability risks criticism. The balance is delicate, but the fact that Traoré successfully repelled the plot may embolden Washington to see that local actors are capable of resisting external covert influence. The U.S. could capitalize on that narrative to counter Russia. Finally, the U.S. domestic reaction. In Washington, the Russia-Africa push underscores a larger global competition with Russia and China. It becomes one more front in the strategic tug-of-war. The Traoré episode might be held up as a case study in how local agency can thwart foreign interference, a useful narrative in U.S. strategic circles. Now we draw comparisons. Africa versus United States in this story. What are the parallels, the divergences, and lessons? First, agency and vulnerability. In Africa, the Traoré case reveals both vulnerability to covert plots and the capacity for local agency. States in Africa are often susceptible to external influence, through money, coups, mercenaries, but they are not passive. Traoré's detection and counterattack show that influence does not guarantee control. In contrast, in the United States, covert influence is more constrained given established institutions, rule of law, intelligence oversight, but soft influence propaganda, cyber tools, is always a battlefield. The difference is that the US is less exposed to overt mercenary infiltration, though cyber operations and disinformation campaigns can mirror similar stratagems. Second, asymmetric tools. In Africa, Russia deploys mercenaries, military support, resource deals, clandestine plots. These tools work in arenas of weak oversight, fragmented states, and contested authority. In the US, influence is exerted through diplomacy, financial systems, sanctions, political pressure, media influence, cyber tools, less via boots on ground, except in special operations. The contrast shows how power projection adapts to the context. Third, risk and blowback. The Traoré plot backfired. It reveals a danger. Covert operations against sovereign leaders can strengthen their legitimacy, provoke backlash, and undermine the plotter's strategy. In the US context, covert foreign operations or interference are fraught with risk of exposure, scandal, or unintended consequences. The key lesson is that clandestine strategies carry volatility. Fourth, narrative and legitimacy. In Africa, Traoré could present himself as defending national sovereignty against foreign meddling. That narrative gives him domestic legitimacy, even if governance is contested. In the US, narratives likewise matter deeply. Foreign interference, whether by Russia, China, or others, is politically toxic. Any covert operation must manage narrative risk. Thus, in both theaters, legitimacy and narrative control are central. Finally, the battleground is global but with local focus. The broader struggle between great powers plays out through local actors, states, and crises. Africa in 2025 is a frontline for that struggle. The US is both actor and observer, trying to posture advantage without overextension. We now arrive at a conclusion, drawing threads together and pointing forward. The purported Wagner assassination plot against President Traoré in Burkina Faso was not simply a dark intrigue. It is a microcosm of the high-stakes contest over Africa's future, whether Russia, the West, or local actors will influence the direction of governance, security, and resources. That the plot was exposed and thwarted gives signals. Local actors still have agency. Russia's heavy-handed instruments can backfire. Alliances built purely on coercion may not endure. For Putin's Africa plan, this is a serious setback. The attempt to eliminate a resisting leader may scare off others. It erodes the perception that Russia can intervene without consequence. And in the face of military setbacks, e.g. in Mali, and resistance in CAR, the Wagner model may be losing momentum. Russia's recalibration via the Africa Corps suggests a recognition of limits. For the United States, the Traoré episode is a moment to act with nuance. Washington can support the narrative of sovereignty and resistance to covert influence, while offering alternative security partnerships and development frameworks. But it must avoid repeating the mistakes of heavy-handedness. The US must respect African agency and avoid becoming a new puppet master. Looking ahead, the balance of influence in Africa will continue to be contested. Success will go to those powers and strategies that combine legitimacy, transparency, local buy-in, and adaptability. The era of raw mercenary conquest may be waning. In sum, the Wagner assassination plot may have backfired spectacularly. Traoré may have dealt a blow to Putin's Africa ambitions. But this is far from over. The chessboard has changed, and the next moves will be decisive. We will watch closely. Thank you for sticking through this long deep dive on a dynamic and consequential story. If you found this useful, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Let us know in the comments what you think will happen next. Will Russia recover? Will Africa assert its own path? Until next time.